Just give me 1 second here. Okay, so we are recording now, so we are going live. Okay, excellent. So first off, just want to make sure that everyone could see my screen okay. Let me just check in the comments really quickly. If you cannot see it, please let me know. If otherwise, I'm going to assume that we are good. Okay, I see some people typing. Okay, so I think we can see the I think we can see the screen. Thank you. All right, so welcome to today's webinar. So we're going to be talking about how to start designing your own games, getting started with video games, and if you are a complete beginner to game development, this is hopefully going to give you some tools that can help you get started right after this webinar is over with. All right. So I'm not going to talk too much about myself because I want this to be more about you guys and what you want to hear. Sorry, I'm just going to change the audio settings really quickly here. Okay. So yes. So I'm not going to talk too much about myself. I do own my own game development studio called Cloudy Heaven Games, and I am working on a project right now. I also have a lot of experience with teaching people how to program, not just in games, but also in just regular software applications. And I have been a gamer pretty much all of my life, even before I started in going to preschool. I've been a gamer, so I've taken that interest with me. And I actually studied computer science and game development specifically in college. So that's a little bit about my background. Like I said, I'm not going to do too much talking about myself unless you all have questions. Now, here's what we're going to talk about today. So if you want to get into game development, I'm going to be telling you about 3 major steps that I usually like to give students or people who ask me about this. And you can see the steps themselves are sort of broad, but we're going to go through and break down these steps into actionable items. So the first step that I always suggest is to actually learn about the game industry and what you can do as far as making games. The second step is, once you have an idea of what role you would want to play in the game industry, then I'm going to give you some skills that you can look into to build your expertise in that particular role. And then the third step is to actually start making a games portfolio. So something that you can show off to say, these are the games that I've worked on, and you can use that to improve your own skills or to get hired or even to have people buy or download and play your games. Okay, so like I said, these are broad steps that at the surface might seem, okay, well, that's easier said than done. So let's go ahead and really get into the details of how all of this works. So the first thing I want to talk to you all about is the different roles that are involved in game development. And the reason that I start off with that is because I think there's sort of a misconception among a lot of people that once you get into game development, you have to be a programmer. But that's not true. I'm sure some of you might already be aware, but if you aren't, there's lots of other roles that you can play as a developer as well. So one of the most, I guess, obvious roles that a lot of people think of but don't necessarily have a word for is the actual game designer. So these are the people who come up with the basic ideas and concepts for a game and the overall experience of what they want the player to get out of the game. So when someone comes up to me and says, hey, I have an idea for a video game, here's the kind of game that I would make, that's more of the game designer role. And again, I think a lot of people, their initial taste of getting into game development is sort of this, I have an idea for a game, so that they're falling into that game designer camp. Okay, so then, of course, I mentioned programmer already. So if you're going to be, you can make games without programming. Of course, you can make tabletop games, you can make card games, you can even make, like real life sort of interactive scavenger hunts or games like that. But if you wanted to make it a video game, then at some point there needs to be some programming involved. So that's, if you are the person who wants to write the code that makes the video games run on a machine, then you are interested in the programmer role. The artist role, I think that's another one that has high visibility. They create the visual art assets for the game, and that can be 2D art, that can be 3D art, that can be concept art that doesn't necessarily show up in the game itself, but might show up in promotional materials for the game, or the accompanying strategy guides or instruction manuals for games. So that's there's lots of different roles that are involved with that artist family of skills as well. If you want to be a musician or a sound artist, you're someone who's interested in creating music and sound effects for the game, there's that. Also related to audio is voice acting, providing the voice for character dialogue in the game, or maybe narration or anything like that. Writers, they're the people who focus more on the story, the script, the dialogue, and any other necessary written products for the game. And again, like I said, that can include things that don't appear in the game itself, but might be supporting materials such as instruction manuals or things like that, or strategy guides. Playability and quality assurance tester. So these are people who, they get the games and they play them and make sure that there are no bugs or problems in game quality. So I think that's something else that a lot of people use as sort of their first role in games. A lot of big companies will advertise or look for job roles as people who are going to be play testers. So that's another common role that people might not necessarily think about. Project management. So any big project, particularly a software project, requires a lot of coordination, a lot of planning and organization. So if you are that person who is good at making the project run smoothly, then you might be more of a project manager role. And that's also a very important role for large companies as well. If you're more of someone who's good at being social and promoting things and getting people involved in excitement for your game, then you might want to be a marketer or a promoter. That might also include merchandising like t-shirts or toys or things like that. And then the final role that I have listed here is a technical writer. So that's a little bit different from the writer role that I mentioned before, whereas this is someone who's more on the technical or software side of things. So you're writing documentation that's aimed at the software developers, or the how to actually play the game for end users. So here's what operating system you need, and here's the system requirements, things like that. So those are the people who write that sort of information out for different users to consume. Okay, so and I think you can really sort of break these down into even more roles, or things that I might not have mentioned here, but I just wanted to familiarize you with some of the available roles that you can take as a game developer. Okay, so now that we've gotten that out of the way, if you've decided on a role and you want to know, well, what skills do I need? So for all of the roles, I think that some basic things you can learn that are useful are game design. So I think that even if you're a programmer, or even if you're a project manager or a marketer, I think it's just useful to have some game design skills just in general, so that you have the general oversight and the flavor of the game that you're trying to create. Because I think that the more people that are involved and understand about the concept that you're trying to create and the different ways to convey that to the player, I think you'll have a better, more well-rounded team that works smoothly. Okay, so definitely look into game design skills. I also recommend humanities courses, which might be a bit of a surprise for some people. If you're interested in the writing side, of course, you've probably thought of of this, because a lot of the stories of games that you see out there, they draw a lot from history or literature or mythology. So, think about even like the Marvel Comics series or the Marvel Universe, that's been adapted into gameplay. That draws from a lot of different mythologies, particularly Norse mythology with Thor and Loki and all of those characters. And think about any game that you've played and see if you can track sort of the cultural roots of the storyline, and you'll see why I'm really recommending getting involved in humanities courses. Now, part of that, you can think also that the writing and communication skills would fall under humanities, but I think that's important for everyone. We've seen in a lot of cases, I've seen professionally that there are technical people that are brilliant programmers, or you could have someone who's a brilliant artist or something like that, but if they can't communicate their idea, then you're going to have real trouble working in a team, right? And this last skill that I recommend for all roles, you might not necessarily want to hear this, but I do recommend some basic math skills for everybody. And that can affect even if you're a project manager. So if you're thinking about budget, or if you're trying to think about how to the mathematics involved with managing resources, you need math there. If you are an artist, there are some software programs, some digital software programs that require a little bit of scripting. So and some math that could be useful there. Of course, as a programmer, you're going to want to know math as well. And I really do recommend learning at least some basic math skills, okay? So now, more specific roles. So of course, if you're a programmer, computer science, programming language, some basic physics. Any game that has graphics where you can move things, move a character or something like that, you're going to need some basic physics and at least some algebra. So that's also something that you're going to want to take a little bit beyond the basic math skills. And again, with the artists, I already spoke a little bit about this, but there's also user interface design. So how does the player interact with what's on the screen? Some basic drawing classes, not necessarily digital, but even pen and paper to get some of the concepts. 2D and 3D specific digital art skills, and as I mentioned, some basic scripting. So if you are interested in, I know some people think about, well, what school do I go to? Do I have to go to school? And I will put this link in the chat here. And in fact, let me go ahead and do that now. But there is a list of schools, of some of the top schools that you can check out if you're interested in getting a degree. So let me go ahead and put that in chat. So the schools for game design. Okay, so that you have that in the chat, and like I said, I'm also going to send out the recording and the slideshow. So don't worry about having to look at that right now, but I just wanted you to have that. Okay, and then the other thing that I recommend is to look out for local game development events in your area to learn more about the industry in general. Now, of course, with the way things are with recent events, a lot of these are probably more moving online now. But look out for groups like the International Game Developers Association or the IGDA, and look on meetup.com for some online events, and just keep an eye out. Maybe your school has some things that are events that are available. Okay, so now that we know the skills that you want, let's talk about how to actually get started with making games and putting together a portfolio for yourself. And again, some of this will depend on the specific role that you're interested in, and some of this will be more general. So if you're an artist or a musician, I think in a lot of cases, it's a bit easier to visualize how you can have a tangible portfolio. So the first thing I recommend is to get together all of the art and music or sound effects that you're interested in sharing, that you think is your best work, and maybe look at setting up a personal website. So there's platforms like WordPress that allow you to easily set up a site. You can have blogs or things like that, and there are some sites that are specifically devoted to making portfolios, so you can look into that as well. YouTube So that can be good for art. You could put together a little slideshow. And of course, if you are in the music side of things or the sound side of things, you can use YouTube or SoundCloud to put a portfolio together. If you're a programmer, this might be a little bit more or less obvious about how you're going to put together a portfolio. But I think the first thing you're going to do is, if you haven't done so already, start doing tutorials in the language or game engine of your choice, if you are not already a skilled programmer. And then once you've done that, you can start making your own demo games. So what I like to recommend is, don't necessarily start out with programming your idea for your dream game, but maybe based off the tutorials that you've done, maybe do some sort of spin-off games or something that makes some tweaks or modifications to the tutorials, and get experience that way. And then from there, you can start making more involved or complicated demo games, okay? And again, in general, I think the best thing that you can do is find teams that you can join to make games for your portfolio. So some of the roles that I mentioned, you're not going to be able to do all of the games on your own. So for instance, if you're a producer, then if you're interested in more of a production role, then you might not have the hands-on sitting down and making and programming a game or making the art. But what you can do is you can find a team that can come together around an idea. And you can find teams in various places. So, we've already sort of mentioned school. So if you are in school, look for classmates who are like-minded, or clubs that are devoted to game development. We again mentioned sort of the virtual game dev events or local game dev events. Those are good places to find teammates. And also, there's forums like TigSource, which is the independent game source, or gamedev.net, where you can go to those sites. There's usually a section in the forum that says, I'm looking for a team. Here are my skills. Contact me if you're looking for someone who might be useful to your team, or I have a game idea and I need people, so please contact me. And that's also a good place to go and share your portfolio once you have that together. Okay, so that's how you can start finding people and projects and putting together your portfolios and your demos. All right. Now, speaking of programming, another common question I get is, okay, well, what do I start out with? Because there's a lot of programming languages and software out there, and it can be overwhelming when you're trying to figure out what you need to, where you need to start with. I will say that just in general, if you're not really sure about your exact role or with programming, what type of programming or what type of game you make, I think really any language starting out with is better than none, because a lot of the skills are transferable from one particular language to another. But I will go more into detail on that if anyone really wants to when we open it up for questions. But if you are starting out, you want to get started making games, but you don't have any programming background. So there's some tools that I recommend. There's Stencil, for instance, is one that I've heard good things about. Game Salad is another one that I think is pretty beginner friendly. Game Maker Studio, I've personally worked with Game Maker Studio, and I know that they do have a what's called a drag and drop interface. So if you are not programmer, or if you're not a programmer, then there's a visual interface that they use that allows you to put games together without having to do any coding. Now, Game Maker Studio does have a scripting language as well, if you are interested in getting more into the programming side. And the good thing about Game Maker Studio is I know that they have a very good community that has lots of tutorials and lots of help. Okay, some of these that I've mentioned are not free of charge, so there is a bit of a cost involved with some of them. So research that. But Scratch, which is another programming language or visual programming language for beginners, that's really aimed at kids, but also I think older learners as well can benefit from it. It was developed at MIT, and it's a very useful language that I've had experience teaching with. So that's something you might also want to look at to get sort of the background skills of game design and development while learning a bit about the programming basics. Okay, so if you are really ready to jump in and you're like, I do want to make games, I'm not a programmer, but I do want to start learning some programming. There's a couple of languages that I can recommend as a good intro. So there's one called P5.js. Okay, so this is a library, a coding library based on JavaScript, and it's really specialized for beginners. And if you take a look at this link here, it will take you to the online web editor. So you don't even have to download anything. You can go to that site, and there's tutorials and things to help you get started with that. Very beginner friendly, and I've worked with a lot of younger students with this as well. I'm also putting together an online class that's focused on how to make a basic game in P5.js. So if you would like information on that, I will be sharing that at the end here. So, just stay tuned, and I'll send out information as well. You might have also heard of a language called Python. So there's something called Python Turtle, which gives you a nice introduction to Python using graphics. And I believe it's like programming a little robot to move and do things on the screen. So that's something that people have worked with as well that I know of. So if you are someone who is more advanced and you already have some programming experience, or you're really ready to jump in, then I can recommend Unity, which is based on the C# programming language, and it's one of the more popular ones out there, and it's definitely got a lot of support. If you're experienced with Java, then you can take a look at the JMonkey game engine. I believe that does 2D and 3D games, so you can take a look at that. And also, based on C# is a framework that I've been using myself. I'm working on a project now. It's called Monogame. All right, so this is it's more of a framework rather than an engine, more than Unity. So it's a little more complicated to do some basic things rather than Unity, but it is good if you want to have more control than you can have in some game engines. Okay, so those are some resources that I recommend to get started with. Okay, so I'm not going to go too much into what a typical day is like for a game developer, unless once I open it up for questions, we can come back to this if you're really interested. But it does depend on the role and the stage you're in, of the game development phase. So we can come back to this if there's interest of it. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and give you my contact information, and then there's a couple of other things that I want to look at together. Okay, so these links here, the first one we're going to look at together is an in-progress document that I have that I'm always adding to. It's in Google Docs. Like I said, it's in progress, but there's a lot of good information there. So we're going to look at that very briefly here in a second here. There's also the link to that introductory game programming course that I was telling you about that I'm putting together. That's going to be available to you. If you want to sign up for email updates, to get on my mailing list, because I do try to do events and put together resources for people, you can go to my site, cloudyheavengames.com/about. So that will take you to, there's a sign up form on there, and that site also, or that page rather, also has categorized links of, if you're looking for something in particular, it can help you find what you need. Here's my email address, contact@cloudyheavengames.com. Some of the game projects and books and things that I've written, you can find at cloudyheavengames.itch.io. And here's also my Twitter. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to I'm going to copy all of this, and I'm going to put it in the chat. Okay, so let me go ahead and do that for you now, and then we're going to look at this in progress document that I mentioned here. Okay, so you have that in chat here. Okay, so let's go ahead and switch gears and look at this document that I mentioned. Okay, so here's the Google Doc. And again, it starts out with some more of my contact information. And there is also an anonymous survey or comment form at the top here, the SurveyMonkey link. So if you find yourself reading through this document and you have more questions, or there's something that you want to ask me, and you don't want to contact me by email, because I know not everybody's always comfortable with that, then here's I posted also in the chat the link to this survey. Okay, and you can also use this to give me feedback about this presentation if you want. So it's really quick, just a form where you could just fill in whatever comments or suggestions, and I will get that and I will respond to you. Of course, if you are sending me this anonymously, you'll need to keep an eye on the page or sign up for my email updates or something like that, because I'm not going to be able to get back to you personally via email. So just keep an eye out for that. Also in this document, I've gone into more detail about the game development roles that we mentioned. So you see on the left-hand side of the screen, there's a handy navigation window that you can easily get to different sections, and you can take a look at the different roles that you're interested in. I have more of a breakdown of some of the things they do. So game designer, for instance, here's more of a detailed description, some of the duties that you have as a game designer, more about the education and classes that you can take. And I also have here other activities that you can participate in. You'll notice that for all of the roles that I have so far, I do recommend playing a variety of video games. So, how often do you take a class like this, or take a class in school that recommends you play video games, right? So you can have a little bit of fun with that. Your homework, I guess, so to speak, is to play video games, but pay more attention to what works in video games. What makes them enjoyable, what makes them difficult, too easy, what are things you would change. So really focus on that when you're playing games, all right? And the roles that I have up so far are game designer, programmer, artist. I haven't really started filling in the musician or sound artist part yet, but again, like I said, there's so much that I can say about this topic that that's why I'm always adding and coming up with new information, because there's just there's entire classes and university classes and semester-long courses that are devoted to this stuff. So like I said, just keep an eye out, because I'm going to be updating this. Now, making your own game. So there's some tips that I recommend if you already have an idea and you're looking for more next steps. Okay, so the first thing I always say is to write your game idea down. And you don't even have to go into like a long, complicated document. You can just start out with a 30-second game pitch and a short description. So what do I mean by a short description? So think about when you are on the App Store or on Steam, or you're in, I guess, GameStop, if you still do that, and you're looking for a game, and you're trying to figure out, well, what is this game about? How do I know if I want to play this game? So, of course, the developer, they have to write a very short description, usually 1 or 2 paragraphs, or even a few sentences even, about what the game is about. So when you're coming up with your game idea, imagine that you're that potential player, and you're trying to get an idea of what this game is. So try to write out a short description of your game. And now the 30-second game pitch part. So the 30 seconds, that comes more from what's called an elevator pitch. So the idea behind that is, imagine that you are on an elevator with someone, and this person asks you, so what do you do for a living? Or what project are you currently working on? So you can imagine that on an elevator, you only have a short amount of time to get your point across before everyone gets off the elevator and you've missed your chance. So that's why we call it sort of like the 30-second elevator pitch. So you want to see if you can come up with a description of your game that you can verbally express to people in 30 seconds or less, that covers all the key points. Okay, so if you take a look at this document, I also have a description here, an example for one of the games that I'm working on right now, Brain Bouncer. So that's the one that I mentioned that I'm currently developing with Monogame. So here's the description of it, and there's also links to the demo version that you can see on Google Play, or my itch.io page. Itch.io, by the way, it's a site for independent game developers and content creators to have all their projects in one place, and they can sell or distribute the products through that site. So that's what itch.io is. Okay, so you can take a look at that. And now my challenge to you is to take some time and write a 30-second or 3 to 5 sentence description of your game idea. Now, if you want to get practice with this, but you don't have an idea of your own, you can practice by choosing a game that already exists that you like and see if you can come up with a description of that, okay? So that's the first step. The next step is a little more higher level. So the concept document is a document that's about 1 or 2 pages. So it goes into more detail about some of the specifics of your game. And you can see here that I have some points that you want to think about, you know, things like the genre or like what category of game. So like, is it a sports game? Is it an action game, a first-person shooter? You know, all sorts of genres out there, you know, you want to think about that. What platform, so what device do you want to release this on? That can be a smartphone or a tablet. That can be maybe a computer game that you might be targeting. Or, you know, if you ultimately want to get it on a console like PlayStation or Nintendo Switch. A little bit harder to do that, but, you know, you want to have a plan of where you eventually want to end up with that, okay? So you can take a look at some of the points that I have here of what you want to include in a design document, a concept document, rather. And I also have an example. There's a link of a concept document for Brain Bouncer. Okay, so there's also other types of documentation, longer documentation, you know, longer design documents, and I will be adding more information about that. And I do have some other resources that are kind of scattered. So if you want more about that, contact me, and I'll connect you to those, and I'll be adding it again, like I said, to this document. But just start out with this 30-second pitch and this concept document, and I think you'll be in good shape there to continue on with your game idea, especially after everything else that we've already talked about that you can use to get started as well. Okay, so if you're still not sure what your next action steps are, here's a nice little list of what you can do. Okay, so you can, if you're in school, you can start looking at what classes you might want to take. I know this school year, you know, it's starting to head towards the end, but, you know, think about what you want to look at in your upcoming school year. So put together a plan. If you're not in school, you know, you can see what classes might be offered, maybe at a community center, online resources, maybe your local library has some online classes that you can take. So think about that. You can also, if you want to, you can start looking at Scratch. The link's right there. And I believe this link actually takes you to some tutorials that you can use to get started. Write down your 30-second pitch, like I mentioned. There's also another link that I have in this document, which takes you to more questions about your game idea. Okay, so one of the things I do as a service is I help people write software or their game design documents. Okay, and that's the more detailed document that I mentioned, that's kind of like a higher level than a concept document. And these are some of the questions that I ask the people with their idea, because, you know, you really want to start fleshing out some of the details of your game. So this is some questions for you to think about. They might not all apply to your idea, or you might have more details that you want to include that aren't included in this questionnaire. But, you know, this is just something that I think is handy to get started with. Okay. Something else that you might want to do, there is another link here that is a game demo. So and let me go ahead and put these in chat as well. The second link that I'm going to put in chat is the game demo. Okay, and let's look at that really quickly here. You know, you can open that link up if you want to, and, you know, start playing around with it. But the basic idea here is that I have this is, you know, kind of in development. This is something that I used to do in person with students, but last year when everything started going online and we couldn't do in-person events anymore, I put this demo online so that people could do this virtually. Okay, so You can see it's a very, very, very simple, basic game. Okay, and it's simple on purpose. Okay, and the idea is that you have these aliens that are falling from the top of the sky. All right, and if they hit your 3 spaceships, the spaceships will disappear. Okay, and your goal is to try to click on the enemies and destroy them before they destroy your spaceships. And if you see, there's a timer up here. If you can last until the timer runs out, then you win. Okay, and like I said, it's really simple. So you might think, oh, that's a little bit boring. But if you look at the resources that I have underneath, or the text, there's some description of the basics of how this game was made. So this game uses a language called HTML5 and JavaScript. So if you were interested in game development on the web, or for browser-based games, that's what you're really going to be looking at, HTML5 and JavaScript. Okay, so there is some explanation of the ideas of some basic programming concepts that you can look at. There's some resources that you can look at. There's also, I think you're going to find this tab the most interesting. There's a tab where you can edit the game. So if you click on the drop downs, there's a little bit of guided instructions. Any field, any text field that has this blue square in front of it is something that you can go in and edit. So let's see. So we're saying that this game was really easy. So let's see what happens if I change the speed. So let's set it to a little bit higher. So when you made a change, what you want to do is click the Try Code Changes button. And then if the game is over, then you just click the screen to play again. But if the game is in progress, you'll see that that it should automatically, the changes should apply without having to reload. But you see that now the speed is a little bit faster, and now it's a little bit harder to click on the enemies, right? Because I'm using a mouse. Okay, so that's one thing that you can change. You know, if maybe the speed is a little bit too fast, we can set the speed back a bit. But let's see what happens if we change this other value here called Enemyx Motion. Change it from false to true. Okay, so I tried code changes. Now you'll see that the enemies, their motion changes a little bit, because now they're coming in not just from top to bottom, but they can come in from the side now. So you see, if they go out on one side of the screen, they loop back around to the other. Okay, and you know, that's just some one example of things we can change. If you want to change the rate of how fast they're coming, you know, there's a little bit of math involved with that. And like I said, basic math is good to learn if you're interested in programming in particular. So if we change this number here, the chance that there will be enemies, you can see that it changes the rate at which enemies come down on the screen. So we can change the difficulty that way. Okay, and then we can change more cosmetic things, such as the background color. So there's a little bit of help about how to do that, but I'm just going to show you. So right now, it's all a basic white screen, right? So let's say that you know, there's a choice of 3 colors we can do. Let's say we do white, red, and blue. Okay. So if I try my code changes there, and I run this, now we have what's called a color gradient. Okay, so it's transitioned from one color to another, right? And think about how, okay, so the game over text is blue, but what would happen if I made most of the screen red? So if I change this to red, then, you know, it might be a little bit harder to see the game over text. Okay, and the idea, and why I bring this up is because, you know, this is it is deceptively simple, but we can see that by changing a few pieces of information or properties about this game, it drastically changed our game experience. You know, it went from, well, this is really boring, to, hey, well, maybe this is a little bit too difficult, you know. And, you know, also be thinking about the fact that if I'm doing this on my computer, it's a bit harder to try to click on a small space with a mouse, as opposed to if I was doing this on touchscreen, and since it's a website, you should be able to use this on a touchscreen like your phone or a tablet as well. Let me know if that doesn't work. But it's a lot easier to tap on things with your finger than it is to try to move the mouse around and tap on a small space on the screen. Okay, so when you're coming up with your game ideas, think about how little things like that, even different platforms, how will your game idea change if you're using a touch screen versus a mouse or a keyboard versus a control panel, or like a controller like for Xbox or something like that. Now, if you've played games like Pokemon or Elder Scrolls or Fallout or something like that, those are very complicated games that require you to do a lot more than a touch screen would allow you to do, right? With a keyboard or a controller, you have a lot more range of options that are available to you, right? So think about those sort of things. Think about your target audience. So if you are someone who's more of a casual gamer, so you enjoy games like Candy Crush, or games that you can sit down and play just for a couple of minutes between, you're waiting for the bus or something like that, or you're waiting for your next class to start, that's going to be a lot different than someone who plays a more involved game like Cyberpunk or Call of Duty or Elder Scrolls or even Super Mario Brothers. Is a casual gamer going to want to sit down and read a lot of instructions or deal with a lot of menus versus someone who likes a strategy game or a first-person shooter or things like that? So these are things that you want to think about when you're playing games that you like. Think about what works, what doesn't work, how you would change it based on the audience, things like that. Okay. And then just to wrap up here, I've started filling in some recommended resources. So there's some books that I've written that you might want to check out. Here's another site, gamedevelopment.tutoplus.com. They have a wide range of development resources, everything from art to programming to project management to design, things like that. Okay. Now the last thing I said I wanted to give you was the link to this class that I'm doing, and I'll show you here. So this is a class that is focusing on that P5JS library that I mentioned. Like I said, very beginner friendly. And what you can do is, if you want a preview of the courses, if you scroll down, there's some sections of you can take a look at the whole curriculum, and there's some, you click on the preview button and it will take you to, some of the lessons that you can look at. And, I've recorded video lectures, and I also have like the written notes, and there's code samples and whatnot, because I'm someone who really likes to give you the information in a variety of ways. So if you're more into videos and following along that way, that's good. If you're more of a reader or visual learner, you can do that as well. So I have a couple of options for that. If you want to do like the self-paced, just online on your own, you can enroll in that. I also have some guided tutoring sessions that I'm coming up with soon. So they're going to be starting in mid-April. So the dates are here. So if you want to do more hands-on and meet with me every week, 1 hour per week, you can sign up for that as well. And the way that it works right now is I'm still adding lectures to this. So if you sign up, not everything is going to be available just yet. Every week, there's going to be a new set of lessons that are added. Okay, so that's something that you can look at as well. If you're not sure about whether you want to do that yet, you can also sign up for email updates if you want to do that as well. Okay, and the last thing I wanted to leave you with, one last thought before I open it up for questions, is what should the scope of my game be? So what we mean by scope is, we've talked about some of the bigger, more complicated games like Pokemon or Legend of Zelda or things like that. Those take years to create, right? Lots of people and lots of resources and money. So when you're starting out, you're probably not going to want to start that big, okay? So I would say try to start out with something that's manageable based on your experience level. And if you are someone who is just starting out, you're not going to have the tools to be able to make a really complicated game yet. So you start with smaller games, smaller, shorter games. But you also want to think about your resources. You know, if you are a solo developer and you work a full-time job and you work a lot of overtime and you have family commitments, you're probably not going to be able to come up with a really complicated game in 6 months. Okay, so you are not going to, you know, you're going to want to think about your scope and what you can do in that time frame that you have with the resources that you have. Okay, so that was the last thing that I wanted to leave you with here. So, and I wanted to make sure that I left you with plenty of time for questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the floor here. I'm going to put it on Q&A. No, actually, I'm going to put it on presentation mode. So, or discussion mode rather. Okay, so everybody should be able to have the mic here. So you can ask me questions in chat if you want, or you can just, you should have access to audio now. Okay, so I'm going to go through the chat and see if there's any questions. Okay, so there were some questions about some of the links here. Okay, so I did post some of the links. Oh, I see some people said hi, hello. Glad you could be here today. Okay, let's see. Okay, any questions? Let's see. Do I know what a Rickroll is? Yes, I do know what a Rickroll is. Was somebody trying to Rickroll me here? Okay. Okay. Somebody pasted a Rickroll. Okay. All right. There's also. Let me make sure that you have. I think I posted all of the links. Okay. Somebody wanted the Google Doc link, so I'll just go ahead and post that again here. Okay, so I'm putting that in chat. So the Google Doc. Okay, so there's the Google Doc. Were there any other questions or any other anything that you wanted me to go over in more detail? Okay, so so there was a question, do I have your email address? So okay, so I see there's a question about design documents or concept design documents and about the email address. So as far as the email address, I do have the email address for everyone who signed up for this. Okay, but I don't want to. So the email address I got there was for this event specifically. Okay, so what I want to make sure of is that I don't spam you after this event is over with unwanted solicitations, right? So what I'm going to do is, you know, if only any emails that I have that I'm going to send out to you regarding this event are going to be any follow-up, like the event recording, or, you know, like the slides or something like that. So if you want me to continue to contact you outside of that, then what you can do is you can go to this, you know, you can go to, let me see here. Let me get the link here. You can go to this link that I posted here, and if you scroll down here, or yes, there's a newsletter that you can subscribe to and put in your email here. Okay, or, you know, if you go to the bottom of the page, there's a section you can sign up for your email that way. So if you want updates on future courses or things that I'm going to be making available, such as games or other educational resources, then please sign up for the email list that way. because, like I said, I don't want to spam you outside of this, outside of this event. So you have that, okay? The slides, again, I will post the. There is a link to the slides, and let me get that for you. And I did see there was another question that I'm going to answer for you about the level of detail for a game design document. Okay, so let me just get you the slides first here. Okay, let's see, here's the slides. I'm going to put that in chat. So presentation slides. Okay, so you've got the link to that now. The level of concept of detail for concept documents. So the concept document itself, I would say make the concept document maybe 1 or 2 pages. And with the concept document, like I mentioned, it's pretty high level. So the uses of a concept document are usually just to sort of, for your purposes, to really start firming up your idea. You can also use a concept document for to help communicate your idea to potential investors. So if you are someone who has decided that you really want to go all out with this game idea and maybe get some funding, you can use that concept document to give a higher level of, a short but higher level detail to investors. Or if you're looking for a team, you can use that concept document to really quickly give people an idea of what your game is about. Okay, so that's the level of detail for a concept document here. And like I mentioned, there is a link to a concept document, and I have it on SlideShare. Let's see, is there a way to make this a little bit bigger? So you can, but it's, this is, you can see here, this is just about like a page, right? No more than a page. So I think that's usually good for a concept document, okay? There's also another presentation that I usually give to people, and I don't necessarily think I have it on hand right now. Let me see if I do, but once you're ready to go into a more detailed, a higher level game design document, that's more detail, okay? And that's something where you can think of that as sort of like your game development Bible, okay? So that's where you put really detailed levels of exactly what's going to be in your game. Let me see. I do have a let me see if I could find it really quickly here. But yeah, so the level of detail for your game design document is going to be a lot more involved. Okay, so basically, you can see that at each level of documentation, you're getting more and more. You're getting more and more detailed. Okay, so hopefully, does that answer your question about the level of detail for a game design document? And I can also make sure that I will send you I will send a follow-up email that has a link to that game design document, because I did do like a presentation about that. Okay, so I did have a question about how do you put music in a game. Okay, so that really depends on the platform that you're interested in. Okay, so I see some people are interested in music design. So every game engine that you use and every programming language that you use that deals with audio, there is usually some sort of a specialized functionality that tells you exactly how to play sound in your game. So, for instance, if you're using Game Maker Studio, there are commands that you can drop in to your code that says to play a particular sound here. Okay, so if you want to play a sound effect, you can just write a line of code or drop in a block, an action block, and then you can tell it what file to play. If it's a sound effect, or even if it's music, you can tell it whether or not to loop. Okay, so looping is basically playing something over and over again. Okay, so if you're interested in like the music side of things, then what you want to think about is when you're writing your song, if you wanted to loop, so if you wanted to play over and over again from start to finish, one of the things you want to think about is can you write the song so that the end of the song seamlessly loops back into the beginning. So if you think about a lot of times when you're playing a video game that has looping background music, it doesn't stop and start playing again. When you're usually listening to a song, there's maybe like a fade out or a distinct endpoint. But, so think about how you want that looping to work, and that will inform the actual song itself. Now, if you're interested in software for making songs or making music, let me see, there's a couple of links that I can share. So I'm not really an experienced sound engineer or musician myself, but let's see. So let me get you a couple of links here for audio specifically. Now I have worked with sound developers and musicians when I've worked on some of my other games. So, the process usually is that the developer will say, well, here's the sound effects, or here's the music that I want. Here's the songs. Can you please, send me some samples? And then the composer will then, put together some samples and send it to the programmer or the developer. And then as a programmer, I would be the one who would actually do the work of dropping it into the game. Okay, so you can definitely do game design or sound design for music without having to do any programming from that side of it. Okay, so, and I'm also sort of putting in some links in the chat that are focused on game audio. And I think the second link that I put, let's see, did I put two links? Okay, so the first one is audio simplified. Okay, so this second link that I put, if you take a look at that, there is let's see, there's a demo that you should be able to, I think, well, look at, there's a demo video that you can use to sort of get an idea of some of the steps. Okay, and they go into a lot of detail about what audio tools that you want to use. They do talk about some of the technical details, like the file structure of a sound file. They talk about sequencer channels, things like that. So that's something that it could get very technical. But you want to take a look at that. They do have some code in this second link where if you want to look at how to do some audio in a JavaScript window or like a browser, you can do that. Okay, so those are some things to take a look at. Okay, so how do you rig a character? Okay, so rigging a character, that's more about 3D game development. So again, some of that really depends on the tool that you're using. So I think that that one of the, if you're really interested in this rigging, you definitely want to take a look at the Unity game engine. Okay, so let me get you. So let's see, Unity rigging tutorial. Okay, so the things that you really need for rigging, of course, is you need to have like your models, your 3D models or if you are, doing 2D, I think you can do models with that as well. And then you need to be able to go into the editor and, do the actual rigging of, setting up the different movement points and, any animation or things that whatever you require to do that. And I'm going to give you, here's another tutorial. So the good thing about Unity is that as a learner, you can download it for free and you can start working with it. And Unity also has a lot of really good support for users, like tutorials and forums and things like that. So here's a link. Let's see, Unity rigging tutorial. If you really want to get into the details of that, I posted a link in the tutorials where I would definitely recommend checking that out. And it has a video that's associated with it. I think it's about, it's a little bit long. How long is it? About half an hour or so. And it really takes you through some of the details about how to do that in Unity Editor. Okay. And then, of course, if you have another tool that you want to use other than Unity, then I would suggest, checking out the specific documentation or tutorials that are available for that that deal with rigging. Okay. And again, you can contact me if you want, if you need help finding information or tutorials or whatever the case may be. One of my special skills, I guess I would say, is being able to find information, and being able to work with documentation and figure out how to do things. So always feel free to follow up with me about that. Okay, let's see, other questions I have. What does genre mean? Okay, so and also, guys, I know it's a little bit past the hour. I can stay on if you need to, if you would like for me to answer more questions, or if you again, like if you do need to leave, you can contact me via email or that anonymous form, but I will stay on and answer questions if you want. Okay, so getting back to what genre is. So genre is sort of like the category of games. So if we look at different types of entertainment, so whether it's books or movies, you have different genres. Like maybe, if I'm going to see a movie, maybe I want to look at a comedy genre. Okay, so I found genre, comedy could be a genre for movies. You could have action movies. That's another genre. Documentaries, that could be a genre. So that, if you are someone who's experienced with movies, I think you've probably are familiar with genres, even if you didn't necessarily know it. And that applies with games as well. So different genres that you might have for games might include things like action games. So something that requires a lot of, like reflexes and a lot of fast twitch sort of movement. That action games, that could be one genre. And then within action games, you could have like subgenres or subtypes. So that could include things like sports games or fighting games or first-person shooters. Those could be types of action games, okay? There's other genres as well. So you might have like a role-playing game, okay, which is a lot different in a lot of cases than just a straight-up action game. You could also have puzzle games. Those could be another type of genre, okay? So that's what a genre is, and in a lot of cases, you might work with games that have combinations of elements from different types of genres. So keep that in mind as well when you're coming up with your game idea. Okay, and one of the reasons that's so important is that when you have the idea of what your genre is, you might want to start targeting potential players based on that genre. Okay, so if I'm marketing towards people who are interested in sports games, like Madden or FIFA or whatever sports games, that might be a bit different than how I market towards someone who's interested in a casual puzzle game. So for instance, the latest NBA or NFL games, right? We're really concerned with realism and how, oh, I can't tell, am I playing a game or am I actually watching the Super Bowl, right? So people who are interested in that sort of thing might not necessarily be as concerned about that if they're casual players, for instance. Casual gamers might not really care about that sort of thing. Okay, so that's what genre is and why it's important. Okay, so I also saw individual sessions. So, so if you are interested in individual sessions or lessons, you can email me. You can, if you want to do that class that I mentioned, you can sign up for the 15-week lessons there. If that time doesn't work, you can contact me via email and we could set up other things. Sometimes the scheduling, we want to make sure that we work that out because I do a lot of other classes and other projects. So, we can really sit down and figure out what's a mutually workable time. So, if you're interested in that, just let me know and we can follow up. Do I consult on projects? Okay, so yeah, so if you have a project that you want advice on, do please contact me and we can talk about how that works. So depending on the level of detail, we could figure out like if there's what prices are associated with that, or if it's something that's really just like a basic question like, can you point me to some resources or what, some general advice, that might be something that we can just do like in a quick email or something like that. So just really contact me and with your individual needs and we can figure out where to go from there. Okay. Any other questions or anything? Let's see. I'm going to just go through really quickly to see here if I missed anything here. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So you guys have the links to the documents. We talked about music, we talked about genre, we talked about character rigging, and I think that it looks like that's everything. If we don't have, okay, I see somebody else still typing here, so I'll just go ahead and. Oh, okay, good. So it looks like everybody's good. All right then. If there's no other questions or comments, like I said, you should have access to audio now. So if there's if you want to shout out any last questions or anything, it doesn't sound like it, but okay. So then I will wrap up here. I will again say thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend and just be on the lookout for, the recording and I'll be sending all of this information out. All right. Thank you guys so much. Have a good one. All right.